The October Curriculum Committee of the board tonight. I just wanted to get started by reminding everybody that we are live streaming and that it is being recorded for public consumption. It'll be on the website in a couple of days. That just anything that you say in public will be recorded. If you say that your seats, that is a thing that your fellow viewers can also possibly hear. So just to be mindful of what you're saying and that it is being recorded. After our policy committee, I wanted to sort of talk about how we were going to do public comment, how we're going to try it out this time, is that we will still have everybody have an option to come up. I will ask for public comment. If I miss it, it is my mistake. It is not intentional. And we'll ask for if anybody has public comment in person or in the chat. If it looks like we have several people, maybe 4 more people wanting to talk on the same topic, we might go back to doing a time limit on that, but it does not look that like we have a ton of people that are going to be needing to talk for a really long time on any of our particular issues tonight, so we can get started on that and see how we go. So to get started with that, did I miss anything? Anybody else got thoughts and feelings? No? Good. Okay. We're going to kick tonight off with talking about our new course, which I believe is a music course that we're talking about.
We'll do it this way. See, I'm having a really hard time with this today.
Good evening. I'm Scott Weinstein, acting assistant to the superintendent, and one of the, I think, more fun presentations to make is a new course proposal. It's usually led by a teacher that's excited about their content and wants to share and expand it, and that's exactly what this is. Mr. Cooperstein is with us tonight, and Jen Gaudioso, who are going to also come in and talk about this course. I'm going to frame it and give a broad overview of the course. It is a music technology and production course, and we had that in the books for a long time. A few years ago, Josh Cooperstein came to me and wanted to expand that program. And at that point, we allowed Music Tech and Production 2 and 3 was board approved, and we're currently teaching those. Tonight's presentation is about Music Technology and Production 4 and 5. What that will allow us to do is kids that are currently in the program continue on that track, typically for their junior or senior years. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that program. But before we do, what Josh was excited about is our traditional music programs, students typically in elementary school get exposed to an instrument and typically play that throughout. And they're the people that are in our orchestra programs. Often people in choir learn about choir, start singing in middle school, enjoy it, and advance to the high school. And there's not many inroads past that where people get introduced to music. And this course, that's the profile for this course. It's kids that are interested and love music, but don't take it the traditional way that schools often offer them. So that's the student that we're sometimes capturing in this course, and allows them not only to play music, but to create music, another thing that kids really enjoy these days. What we do with our scheduling to allow this to work, courses like English 1 are typically all 9th grade at the high school level, where English 2 is traditionally all 10th grade. Courses in the Unified Arts sometimes have a mixture of courses that are in, for example, Music Technology and Production 2 and 3 in the same course. It allows us to get more students in the program. The teachers differentiate that course, and that would be the similar concept here. As you may think about what are the staffing implications for adding 2 new courses, they would be scheduled with people that are currently in the other courses. Mr. Cooperstein commits to teaching and differentiating, and that's allowed to work. We do similar things in our other arts classes, for example, photography. So it's really exciting that kids are going to be able to go in, they're going to create and build on the program that has already been established. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Jen Gaudioso to talk a little bit more about the program.
Good evening. So I have the pleasure of supervising K-12 music, and I can assure you that this is a labor of love on the part of Josh Cooperstein. In having kids connect with music, something they already love, and finding a way to show their voice, to enact some choice, some opportunities, some personal goal setting, and in doing it in a way that lets them get to advanced levels of learning. So in 2022, Josh came forward with the idea of having courses 2 through 5 to allow students truly to get to that ideal of the strategic plan where we're developing student-driven curriculum and the students are helping to direct their own learning, which was a really exciting idea. At the time, we brought forward to the board courses 2 and 3 for approval with a staged rollout. And course 2 started in 23-24, and course 3 is running for the first time this year. And it's a seed program as we build interest and we let students start to advance, the opportunities open before them. And to that end, we are here tonight to bring forward the proposal for courses 4 and 5. The rationale for this, when we looked at course 1 together, we know that this is a really constantly evolving field. We know that this gives kids really STEM opportunities for careers that are tied to fine art, to music. The idea that this first course gives cursory introduction, foundational level, doesn't really let the students advance to the degree that is possible. So Josh, really visionary, really innovative, looked ahead and could see the possibilities of a multi-year tiered curriculum. And by tiered, we mean the curriculum offered within the classroom can have different levels so that different students of different abilities and experience can participate within the same group. It can attract and be an on-road for students who typically might not have seen or found a spot for themselves in the traditional music program. Simulating real-world scenarios is a really big piece of this work because it lets students see real-world applications for some of these technology skills. Nurturing, of course, individual interest and voice, and really helping them be career ready and see possibilities that they can grow from. So our proposal tonight is to expand the music electives to include Music Tech and Production 4 and Music Tech and Production 5. So I'm going to let Josh speak to a little bit of how we see this as a transformative opportunity for students.
Good evening. Happy Monday. So I want to get into why I think this is such a valuable offering for our students. The first is really personal exploration, and in traditional band orchestra choir curricula, we have content that we focus on to present in concert, and there really isn't a lot of time for students to explore their own voice and how they fit in musically. It's just kind of learning a part, and then through that learning musical skill, but not really getting to express their individual voices. So in this class, we build that knowledge through different projects. Like right now with my Music Tech 3 class, at the end of the week, I'm starting a big podcasting project. So finding things that are applicable to student interest, but also finding things where from a teaching standpoint, there are a lot of finer details that I can go with them and start to explore how the practical side of it can go out of Lower Merion and into the real world. One of the really nice things as this program has gone on, and I've built it too, is the community that's starting to build in the room. You see it with band and orchestras and choirs because they all work together. It's something that is effectively the largest group project you'll ever work on. But in this class, it's obviously individual because everybody's at their own station, they're doing their own work. But there's been a lot of collaboration between students, between group projects, or people seeking out the advice of students who have a little bit more out-of-class practice with some of the things that we cover. So it's been really nice to see the sense of community that gets built between students and the relationships, now especially between multiple levels. I have my Music Technology 3 students that are willing to go and help and walk Music Tech 1 students through projects that they might be struggling on. And even within 6 weeks of school, that's been really nice to see. The biggest one in terms of finding real world opportunities, providing STEM and STEAM career exploration, I have emails out to people at WMMR because it's right in our backyard, and also at my alma mater at Temple University for students at some point to be able to, either virtually or in person, go and take a tour through the studio, to be able to see how the things that they do in class apply in the real world, and see that it's not something that is just school-based and I'm trying to get them to do because I think it's interesting, but because there are actually real jobs that can take the skills that they're learning in the room and be able to take that into a career. So the progression of this, and there's a lot on this slide, so bear with me. So the first course, which has predated my time in the district, I've been here about 10 years. The first one is really a cursory look at a varied topic, or a varied amount of topics. Everything from this is how we make a project, to at the very end doing some very loose composition for film. But all of it is built around the idea of that they're getting real world practice and real world experiences in the projects that they have in that class, even though there are a lot of projects and not a lot of time for that individual exploration of their own voice, just because I want them to get the exposure. In levels 2 and up, I've made more time in my curriculums for each of them that students have the ability, because I have less projects and it has more time for them to be able to work, that they can take some of the things that they're learning in individual projects, apply it to their own voice, and be able to start to create based on what they're learning in class. So in level 2, it was starting to work on a little bit of a more advanced plane, being able to, instead of working from presets, being able to manually manipulate some of the tools that we work with, and being able to understand why moving a certain knob might have a certain effect on a piece of music that they're doing, or why it would change the sound of their voice. In level 3, it's starting to focus more in practicum. Level 3 is built around the idea of students being recording engineers. So how do students use a microphone as an instrument, essentially? And through that, how do you capture what you want to capture? What microphone do you want to use for a certain concept? But again, all of that is built in real world practice. The one that's the most exciting for me is the 4th level, where it's going to be based more in students creating on their own. A lot of the sounds that we work with are either pre-recorded or they are already digitally input into the programs that we use. But there is a topic of study called synthesis in creating your own sounds, and it's something that I'm looking to really touch in very great detail with, to be able to get students to create and have something that's unique to their own voice, and how do you explore that. Level 5 is going to be the ultimate of student-driven curriculum. The idea, and this is stolen in part from the art department at both schools, where I've gotten a lot of input from my department chairs. The level 5 class would be essentially an independent study. Those are the students who are the most committed. They're the ones that see themselves out in the field and going, whether it's in recording, whether it's going on tour and working with somebody, whether it's podcasting. There are obviously a lot of different options, but being able to give them that time to be able to create a portfolio, to be able to submit to schools. I have, through my contacts at Temple, I have an idea of what music technology programs and universities are looking for. So I can use that as a guide to say, I need you to be able to show me these things by X date, depending on where you may be looking to apply. And the idea that they're going to be the ones that are telling me, here's my goal, here are my due dates, I want you to help keep me on schedule, I want you to help keep me on topic, is something I think will be a really interesting twist on the curriculum and the model of teacher-driven instead of student-driven. In terms of scheduling, and I'll tag Scott in here for a part of this too, this year we're running Music Technology 1 and 2 as a fall and then spring, respectively, semester course. And then overlaid on top of that is Music Technology and Production 3, which runs all year. I currently at both schools have students in level 1 currently for the fall, and level 3 in the room at the same time. Is it a little chaotic to teach? Sometimes. But it's been a fun challenge, and the students have been really receptive to being flexible with me trying to figure this out for the first time, teaching multiple levels. The idea then would be to keep building on top of that. So next year, putting Music Technology and Production 4 on top of 1 and 3 in the fall and 2 and 3 in the spring. And then similarly in 26-27, being able to put 5, 4, and 3 as full years all together, and then do 1 and 2 depending on what part of the year we're in. The experiences that they gain from having that mentorship, and again, I mentioned that I'd already seen it. I think it's something that's really unique to this class. Usually in the band, orchestra, choir world, we don't get people who are giving individual attention to another student in the middle of a rehearsal. So it's a really unique opportunity for them to almost function in a kind of unassisted TA position, which I've joked with them all that they've become TAs and they all enjoy that. But I think that's a really neat benefit to running these classes overlapping with each other. So let me tag Jen back in to talk more about the program costs.
Okay. So the idea of differentiating within the class means that while we're adding opportunities for students and choices for students, it contains costs in the sense that we don't need to add new staff. There would be some one-time costs on equipment, supplies, hardware, and recurring costs with some licenses per station, and those allow students to access some of the more what Josh would call like industry level standard experiences. So students really are getting a taste of what is out there in the real world. So that is essentially a capsule here for what the program cost would be as we add these 2 courses. One of the things for full context, we're looking at a lab. This is a lab classroom, and the stations and computers that are in there are part of a traditional cycle for replenishment and updating. So that's coming due within the next couple years. One consideration is that as the SEED program grows, how do we maximize seats in that classroom? Right now, the number of stations is 16. So trying to give students more choice and get them into that section, one consideration is as the lab comes due for updating, we could look at increasing the seats available so that we can maximize class sizes. And some of the reasons for doing that is, as I said, computers are coming to term. The 15-year-old keyboards that are in there that are also used for piano lab, they're functional as pianos, but less so as digital tools anymore. As you know, digital tools age out over time. So planning for this lab update would occur as part of our annual budget cycle and in consideration of the wider budget context. So these decisions are not contingent on whether the course approval is not contingent on these. This is just sharing for transparency the context that we're dealing with a lab classroom that needs some upgrading and maintenance over time. So our considerations as we get to the point that there is some updating needed, that's a prime opportunity to say, well, if we're updating anyway, let's add some additional seats, because then we can give students more choice as they advance and as the program grows. And again, we're at the very beginning, so that growth will happen over time. So the upgrade could also happen over time. So we could do it within a year, or we could break it out and do, like half the class or a quarter of the class. You might say, why not a third of the class? And it's really just that the configuration of seating lends itself better to either do half or maybe a quarter, and that way the students as they're grouped would have common seating. So those are possibilities once we get to that point. The interim impact on students would just be access to the seats in the elective. Timing, however, since the program is just at the beginning of growth, the timing allows us to grow the program, to give those older students who are the peer models opportunity to highlight their work, their experiences, help people, students see themselves in those advancement opportunities and really get excited about the course. So again, full transparency, the idea of the lab expansion, if we were to add those 8 additional seats, when we think of lab classrooms, it's not just a desk that you're updating, it would be the digital pianos, the computers for those additional stations, and some of the software. So that could be addressed over time, again, within a single year, multiple years. And I think Josh is very, very innovative. We've talked about how you could, what would the impact be on having different things running at the same time? And he really is able to meet the needs of students as they are trying to identify their personal goals, their choices. So matching students to the resources they need is something that he's certainly more than prepared to do as we work with variable opportunities to think this through in years ahead. That's it. Questions?
Thank you so much for that presentation. I know some of my colleagues must have questions. I know I do. Who would like to go first? Thoughts and feelings? No? Everybody's going to wait? You want my list? We usually do, but if nobody else is speaking up.
Kimberly has joined us, Garrison, and she has her hand raised.
Okay, Kim, why don't you go ahead?
Are you muted, Kimberly?
We can't hear you, Kimberly. Does Mel or Abby, did you have questions that you wanted to weigh in? Well, Abby, why don't you go ahead, and then Kimberly can try and fix her sound issue, and then we'll come back to her.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for this presentation. It was very cool and very interesting. I have a couple of questions just for my own understanding, and I think probably for everybody. So there are 16 seats per section, is that correct? Mm-hmm. So 16 seats per section 1, section 2, section 3, section 4, or?
So currently at both schools, there's one section total.
Okay.
And that's inclusive of music technology 1 and 3 currently. So if we were to maintain that, it would be putting levels 1, 3, and 4 next year in a 16-seat classroom. And then obviously the choice becomes who gets the priority for those seats. So in an ideal world, to be able to expand, we give more people more opportunity. Currently at Lower Merion, we have 2 sections of music technology, one that runs in the fall and one that runs in the spring. At Harriton, we only have one that runs in the fall.
Okay. And
Piggyback on you?
sure.
Have you had enough interest that you've been having to turn students away?
Yeah. I can't speak to exactly what percentage, but I know that it's not 100% course request to course enrollment rate at both schools.
Okay, and you are the primary educator in this role?
So I teach it at Harriton primarily. I teach it at Lower Merion, but I share that with Aaron Dasco at Lower Merion. He, since I've started here 9 years ago, has always taught an additional section of Music Technology Production 1. And as new courses have been rolling out, I've been responsible for teaching level 2 and now level 3.
Is there a way to shop around for cheaper upgrade costs? This is something I'm not very learned in, but I'm wondering, because it's.
So if you look at my search history, Sweetwater, which is one of the big vendors we pick from, is my top viewed website. I've been up and down every page of that website. I pick things that, number one, can stand up to teenagers, at least I hope. The second, though, and I think more importantly, is that I didn't ask for anything in terms of the bidding process. So I took everything at a retail value. Mm-hmm. So there's potential that we could, through bidding through central office, be able to get that cost down. I just don't know what that looks like because I didn't want to assume that that would be something that would happen.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Kim, did you get your microphone working?
Can you hear me now?
We can, thank you. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. I don't know what that was all about. But anyway, I think the program is terrific. And this is exactly the kind of programming I like to see in our district. I'm just curious, are there field trips for the students to visit like the Curtis Institute, Temple's Boyer School of Music, the Academy of Vocal Arts, Project 440, the Philadelphia Clef Club, and of course, Philadelphia's own Selden School for Music? Is there any collaborations with any of those institutions?
So I can tell you, and I mentioned earlier as a Temple alum, I've reached out to the person who was my recording and sound editing professor, who currently runs Boyer College of Music and Dance Recording. It's a long title. But the hope is that I would love to be able to take right now my Music Tech 3 kids, because it's the most practical application for them being recording based for that class, to be able to put them in a studio, talk with someone who's doing recording engineering as a career, and really pick his brain about how that process works. And I mentioned the same thing with WMMR, where obviously WMMR is a huge radio station, but it's also right in our backyard in Ballackinwood. I had made an inroad there, and hopefully we can get students to be able to go there too. Some of the places that you mentioned, we actually have a nice tie-in with Project 440. Our new acting principal at Harriton, Stu Warschauer, has history with Project 440, and he talked to me about it. And I would love to be able to try and make inroads with them as well. So to all of your points that you made, yes, I would love to be able to do it. And I know field trip committee is a totally separate issue. But for right now, yes, I would love to be able to do those kinds of things.
Thank you, terrific.
Thanks, Kim. Mel, did you have any questions? Yeah. Or Scott, did you have something you wanted to jump in with? No? Good. Okay, you go ahead.
Thanks, Shannon. I remember being at this presentation when you were first rolling it out and was intrigued by it then, and I'm still intrigued by it now, and I'm glad to see it's progressing.
Thanks.
So you answered how many students, I'm wondering, as students, now you're moving into the higher levels, are there on-ramps for students that may not have had time in their schedule to get into the higher levels, but may have the ability? Is there a way are you working with students in that, be able to work with students in that capacity?
Yeah, I mean, so far in what's been a one-year trial period, there hasn't been many. But I did have a student at Lower Merion last year who didn't take music technology in production 1, but talked to me and said, hey, I would love to be able to jump into music technology 2. What do I need to know to be able to feel comfortable starting in 2? And we talked about it, and ultimately his skill set met where he needed to be in the second level class. And there were a couple things that he picked up in the very beginning that he didn't realize that he needed to know. But within about 2 weeks, he was totally fine. So yeah, there are definitely opportunities for students to jump in somewhere in the middle. I don't know, now that we're talking about doing 3, 4, and 5, how practical it would be. But at least to jump from 1 to 2 without having to take 1 as a prerequisite, it's already happened in a very short sample size.
Okay, that's really good to hear. We did talk about it a couple of years that we were wondering about worries about copyright and that. Have you run into any of that? Because we know sometimes students work from somebody's prior art to edit.
And that's actually something for Music Technology 4 that I want to work with a lot more in depth, is the art form that's known as sampling, which is taking a pre-existing piece of music and chopping it up for small parts and recreating a new piece of music from an old piece of music. But that is something where copyright obviously is a huge part of it, and to publish it requires a lot of different layers worth of clearances with an artist, clearances with a label, clearances with copyright. So there's a whole layer that we can talk about. And I know we talked in Music Tech 2 and 3, as we were talking especially now about podcasts and intellectual property. It's a discussion that I plan on having very shortly because, like I said, I'm starting that on Friday. So I'm starting to brush up a little bit so that way when we get to talk about it, I can talk about those things.
Okay, that's really good to hear that you're taking that into account. And then I was also wondering about, you're talking about working with universities, which is great. But some kids may be very talented, but not ready for university at graduation. Is there any apprentice programs out there or anything that you can find that could be partnering with?
I know there's one, and this is again something that Stu Warschauer talked to me about. There's not a project, there is a group, and I think primarily they work with Overbrook High School and the Mann Center. It's a partnership between the two because of the proximity, that works with students at Overbrook and essentially has them intern at the Mann Center in different aspects of the behind the scenes, whether it be lighting, sound, just general operations of the facility. But I think that right now is exclusive just to Overbrook High School and the Mann. I know that currently there are opportunities in Montgomery County, both the technical high school and also community college, with digital recording or music technology in whatever format. So I know we have students, there's been a very, very small number that have gone to Monco High School for music technology, but I know of a few already that have gone the community college route specifically for that program.
Okay, It's great to hear. And also, I don't know if you're aware, Montgomery County Intermediate Union also has some cost programs for collective buying across the county, so perhaps that's somewhere else to look.
I didn't realize. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
What? You should. Yeah, you go last. Okay, it's okay. Just in terms of number of enrollment of students, can you speak to how many students are currently enrolled at each school in Music Technology 3, and then projections for the course for Music Technology 4 for next year?
Yeah. So right now in the third level course, I have 5 at Harriton compared to 5 requests, which is great. Because of the way the master schedule ended up getting built at Lower Merion, I originally had 5 requests for the class and only ended up with 2 students that ended up being enrolled. With both of those classes, roughly half of them are going to graduate at the end of the year. I have a weird mix of sophomores and seniors, no other in between. So I have, at Harriton, I have 3 sophomores that could continue next year and sound like they want to continue, because they were talking to me about making a promo video this morning for the program, so I feel like I can count on the 3 of them. And then at Lower Merion, of my 2 that I have there, only one of them is going to be here next year as a junior, so, and he's another one that's a diehard, so I see him being in it next year also.
Okay. So out of all the students in it, there's 4, like the maximum number would be 4 for next year that could take the course?
Correct.
And it's the year-long course, so we wouldn't be adding students.
Also correct.
Second semester.
Yes.
Okay. And then, as far as the independent study for the 5th level of the course, I don't know if you can speak, or maybe Scott or Jen, you could speak to other courses that have more of an independent study type of structure. Like, is that common throughout Unified Arts, or is that not as common to do?
I can speak a little bit to the art program. When students are getting into that final AP Arts, for example, they have to put together a portfolio. They have to come up with their own theme for the work. Used to be that it was just thematic. Now they also have to show growth. So a lot of it's work that they do in consultation with the teacher, designing their personal goals, also taking into account what they want to do with college, the dates that they have their, let's say a portfolio review by a college, and that's a distinct process from a portfolio review that's part of the AP course.
Right.
So it's very, very individually based at that point. In fact, I think it was the previous chair who suggested this model for
Yes, it
this
was.
course. So I'll let you
Yeah.
speak to that part.
So originally, and this, the original impetus for all of this was, for my master's program, I wanted to add a second course, period. And then I went to Peter Murray, who has since retired, who was the department chair at Harriton, one of their art teachers. And he goes, okay, so what about 3, 4, and 5? And I looked at him and I said, what do you mean? He goes, well, that's how we do it in the art department. You should do that too. And I went, okay, why not? So because of his input, this really has taken the shape that it has, where that 5th level has been always aimed at students being able to make their own portfolio, be able to really express their own voice as an end result of that course and that whole scope and sequence.
Thank you. And then my last question, the recurring cost for the licenses, that's annually recurring or every few years?
Annually.
Okay. And that cost is for 8 stations?
No.
Yes, or
So that cost
That's
right
per
now.
station?
So the cost for that recurring software cost is for 36 computers.
Okay.
16 student stations at each lab, the teacher station at each lab, and a teacher laptop, mine and Aaron Dasco's at Lower Merion. So that way we can grade if students use those software tools.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, I have what looks, as I'm looking at it, like a lot of questions, but I'm really trying to just do some clarifying. Okay, let me just go in order of how I've written this down. How do we recruit students to this course? And I'm thinking particularly because you're looking to expand this through to a 5th level, a student would have to be freshman year, know to be in this course, to be able to complete your full structure. How are you going about recruiting so that you can, those kids that you have as sophomores now, that next year you get that group of freshmen in at your Music Tech 1?
So that's a conversation that Jen, Scott, and Mike Johnson and Stu Warschauer and I had. There were a bunch of great ideas that got thrown out, and obviously the first of which is just internal knowledge of the class, where for like guidance counselors as an example, Stu Warschauer wants me to go in front of their department meeting as they're getting ready to start talking about 8th grade course enrollment to be able to say, if you like music but you don't play an instrument or you don't sing, this is a really good option for you to be able to express your creative side and be able to continue your music learning if you like general music, or if you are in a band that, you know, you play in somebody's garage and you don't really have a place to play in school. This is the place in our curriculum for you.
Yeah.
The other place would be, like I was just saying, that my kids were joking about making a promotional video, which is not really a joke. They very much want to do it, and it very much is something that I want to try and have happen. And I've actually already talked with one of my colleagues at Harriton about making like a faux documentary about work in that class as a promo
This is
to
Spinal
students.
Tap. This is
In a
Music
weird
Tech.
way, yeah. This is Music Tech, Spinal Tap, whatever. It could be both. But no, that is the biggest thing. And I realize that if I'm asking for a program that essentially does track someone from the day they walk into high school to the day that they leave, I know I have to get kids from day one.
Yeah.
And that really starts at 8th grade.
And I think if, as an administration, we can facilitate teachers of programs that have that kind of tracking to be able to go into the middle schools in 8th grade and say like, hey, I've got this really, really cool thing you can do. Why don't you sign up for my class? Like go recruit to the people you actually want to get in there.
The thought of standing up in front of a couple hundred 8th graders and saying that is kind of intimidating, but
That's what you can make your midterm for your students, I guess.
there we go.
Yeah.
I was going to say the elephant in the auditorium that day would be, there's other unified arts teachers that are excited about their programs equally. So we try to present them.
I mean, of course, but if we want to, it seems to me if we're doing that for some courses and we're trying to get students to know about the cool things we do, that seems like a good well to tap.
For sure. The other high impact night we have is a course selection night that we run at the high school each year as you're choosing courses that we run for rising 9th graders at the middle school and then everybody coming back to the high school. So that's another night we often promote classes like that.
Yeah, I mean, and it could even be a thing where if you're talking to your music colleagues at the middle school level, that there will be some students that participated in music in middle school that don't necessarily want to make that jump in high school, but might be interested in this tracking.
And part of that, before you keep going, is that the general music requirement stops at the end of middle school. So students, if they have a choice to either not continue in music because that means they can have a study hall or free, or take a higher level class where they know they have to put in more work as opposed to take music, it's a good way for them to know that there is a path, that there is something that I can continue with. So I think that, yeah, is very important.
Yeah, go ahead.
That reminded me, so just to clarify, if you're in this class, are you also taking like an orchestral or band or choir, or is it instead of?
The large majority of my students aren't taking band or orchestra. They're just kids who are musically.
Could they? Like, is there
Oh,
room in the?
absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. They're just musically inclined students that don't fit in the curricular, not curricular, but the ensemble-based music classes. But that's not to say that I haven't had my fair share of crossover with students who are in band, choir, orchestra that are also in music tech as their second elective.
There are some kids that are just going to find their place and take every possible elective, says the kid who took all the theater classes in high school. Okay, so my understanding for what you're hoping is if we get all of these 5 levels, that it will be sections that will have level 1 and 2, and then a section that has 3, 4, and 5. Is that correct?
Not entirely.
Okay, can,
So 1 and 2 run as opposing semester classes.
Correct.
So 1 in the fall, 2 in the spring.
okay,
And then over top of each of those would be 3, 4, and 5. So it would be 1, 3, 4, 5, and then 2, 3, 4, 5, depending on what portion of the year it's in.
so you're still, even as we expand this, you're looking to run 4 sections, 4 levels in one classroom?
Call me crazy, but potentially.
Yeah. that
There
seems-
may come a time, depending on what requests look like at different levels, that might not be feasible anymore, but I don't see that happening next year or in 2 years. That'll be something that as we start promoting it, you know, it might be a slower build to that, but we might have to break off Music Tech 1 into its own section if we're really pushing for that to be the place for students to end up as a freshman.
Yeah, I'm not like going in support of spending more money that it would cost to run those extra sections. I just am cognizant that you are a human being and I would like for you to not burn out while you are providing this lovely educational experience for
I
our
appreciate that.
students. I mean, it's nice to remember that we're all human being people. Okay, so you kind of went over this, but remind me, what is our number of students currently enrolled? And if we expanded this the way that you're talking about, what numbers would we be hoping to see?
Sure. So right now, enrolled in Music Tech 1 at Lower Merion are 16 students spread across 2 sections. At Harriton, in the level 1 class right now, we have 7. Both of those numbers are not reflective, again, of requests, but are just what ended up being enrolled by the time the master schedule was built. In Music Technology level 2 at Lower Merion, we have 10 enrolled for the spring, and at Harriton, we had 3 requests and 1 that got enrolled. And for Music Tech 3, currently we have 5 at Harriton, and everybody who requested got enrolled. At Lower Merion, we had 5 that requested, 2 that ultimately were enrolled.
So is there any sense in perhaps having a larger lab at LM than there is at Harriton, since just because we seem to have lower enrollment numbers there than we do here, and if we're trying to just manage ongoing costs, or is that not equitable?
Yeah, when we broke apart here are some ways we could parse out the cost over time. We looked at, if you did the whole class, if you did half, or if you did a quarter. One of the things we also talked about is if you did a school at a time, if it turned out there was greater need in one school than another, we could also look at that. It really, you know, it's not imminent, so trying to let the program go and see what our
Yeah,
needs are.
to be clear, I wasn't advocating for doing one school over the other, merely that if we were expanding and the non-expanded number was meeting the current needs at one facility and not at the other, to consider updating both at the same time, but expanding one as needed. And, okay, so the thing I wanted to clarify is what is existent and what is additional cost to adding this course. So it looks like, I know we look at this and we say, $94,000, that's a large number. But my understanding is that that's not just the cost for expanding it to the new stations. That's upgrading and expanding?
So in a nutshell, and I'll let Josh expand on this, the cost includes the new hardware, including the new computers. It includes the shift to the digital, new digital pianos.
Right.
And the stations. Essentially what we're trying to do to expand is right now, I forget how many keys, but picture a keyboard like this.
A full-size 88-key keyboard.
So it's taking up a lot of space in the class. If the shift were made to a smaller one, we can fit more seats in the classroom.
Okay, yeah, what I'm trying
So
to.
that it's furniture and hardware.
Right, so what I'm trying to get at is that $94,000 is in part already baked into to updates that we would already want to do if we added no more levels to this course. If next year we were offering 1, 2, and 3, that a significant chunk of that $94,000 would still need to be present in the budget, and that some portion of that money would then be purely for the expansion versus the update. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, when I built, and Jen had asked me to do this maybe like a year and a half ago, to start thinking about how to expand the labs. And obviously I know I have finite space, so the answer was to make everything smaller. The idea was to build it independent of whether 4 and 5 would run. So that $94,000, if we were to do everything in one fell swoop between both schools, would be to bring everything up to everything we have right now. All the software.
For the same number of stations?
For an expanded number of stations.
Okay.
So right now in each room, we have 16 desks that are each a little bit over 5 feet wide with a piano that is also 5 feet wide. But the amount of students who use all 88 keys on a keyboard, even in our digital piano class, is very low. So to be able to shrink that down to a 61 key keyboard, which more students would use the full of that keyboard at that point, and to get desks that are essentially 2/3 the size to go down to a desk that's about 40 inches wide, allows us to put in the same footprint 24 desks. That cost also includes the computers, the software, the cabling, the benches.
Yeah, I
everything
was
that we
just
would
trying
need.
to get at it from a board perspective of sort of parsing the costs that we would normally already budget for.
Yeah.
Because it feels like a big number, but it's already largely accounted for that. And I appreciate that. And I just, this sounds like a great program. I was really in support when you put it through the first time. I'm happy to see this expanding to really serve a corner of our student body that might not have been getting that kind of attention before. I would just think that it would be really helpful when it's presented to the full board, if this gets recommended to, for approval, to have just a breakdown of what the cost, the maximum cost per station would be. So that we can see, okay, well, this is what it would cost if we did not add anything to this versus that. And that would be a little easier to explain to the full group.
And I have the itemized in a Google sheet that Scott and Jen are both shared on.
You
So
are speaking the love language of this group.
I live too much of my life in Google Docs and Google Sheets. So if that's something you'd like to see, I can definitely make sure that gets shared with you all.
That would be amazing.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much. Do we have any comment in the chat or in person that would like to speak to the expanded offering of this course? No? Okay, is everybody good recommending this for adoption by the full board?
Can I make one more?
Abby, go ahead.
Topic or comment? Excuse me. I have one more thing as you were talking about changing the size of the stations.
Sure.
Just to be considerate of people that might have mobility challenges to make sure that everything is compliant with needs.
That's not something that I looked at initially, but I will make sure that I look into that. And I have some strong ties in with the special ed department at LM, so I can check in with them and make sure that that fits.
Temple also has a really cool,
A 3D printing
owl.
lab.
I forget the
Tech
name
Owl.
of it. Tech Owl, which is a great.
Owltech. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good, we'll get
So
there
that's another,
eventually.
just a resource just to kind of check measurements against.
Sure.
Thank you so much. We're good moving this forward? Yes, yes, yes? Yeah, yeah? Oh,
Yes.
Yeah, yes, great. Okay, well then, we will be happy to talk about that again at our business board meeting. And now we can.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. You may go
Thank
home.
you.
Thank you.
We're going to move on to our contracts, and this month we have one contract, which is, I just clicked out of the wrong window, pardon me, for the annual renewal of Studies Weekly for elementary ELA and social studies. Oh, yes, somebody should talk about that. One of you two should pick that, sorry.
I want to,
I neglected to mention that we should welcome Mr. Weinstein to being the new district administrative liaison, I believe is the title to this committee, taking over for Dr. McGloin. So that was my mistake. I should have introduced who was speaking. If you would like to introduce the contract for us, that would be great.
thank you. I want to first thank the whole curriculum team for being here to support. We're about to introduce summer programs, and they're more intimately familiar with them. And more intimately familiar with Studies Weekly is Dory Martin-Patone, who I'm going to ask to step to the microphone and share a couple words about it.
Excuse me. Good evening. Basically, this is a supplemental resource. It's one that when we went to the National Social Studies Conference we looked into, we had some teacher leaders last year with 3rd and 4th grade. We received feedback. They did want to use it again this year. 3rd grade came out with a whole new version. It is really, it follows, it's thematic, it's periodicals like newspapers. They get them all at once, so we get to sit in curriculum and talk through it and be very intentional as how we supplement the curriculum. And it's more the geography and civics standards. They have project-based learning opportunities. There's an online component that you can change into multi-languages for our different learners. It's scaffolded, so we can utilize it for differentiated instruction. and it is really engaging. So it is predominantly just for the civics and government strand, as well as the economics. We do use a little bit of the history, more the Pennsylvania history portion. So this is a renewal of that resource for the updated editions for this year.
Great, thank you. Do we have any questions?
Got it.
Kimberly, was that a question?
No, ma'am.
All right, thank you so much. Sarah, did you want to jump in?
Hi. I was just wondering if you can speak to what the main curriculum is, I guess, for third and fourth. Like, what do we use as the overall curriculum? And then this is one of how many supplements that we have for ELA or social studies for third and fourth grade?
So I can give you the supplemental resources. As of right now, we need an updated core resource, and we can speak to the curriculum cycle a different time. So for now, it is going to share some space with our other supplemental resources. Pennsylvania history is predominant in fourth grade, but we center in on the civic standards, the history standards for third and fourth grade. That is our curriculum. We write on based on the standards and then what resources we use to support it. We have Scholastic News, which is another subscription. We like those also because they support small group instruction and the relevance and engagement. This is another resource that we use for informational reading and social studies and for project-based learning and integrated learning. So those would be the two social studies resources. We don't take their whole curriculum. We rate our curriculum and then see where it makes sense based on teaching those standards.
And this is for all schools, all third and fourth grade classes? across?
Correct, yes.
Okay. It's just nice to try and get, I know a lot of times we're given small or smaller budget items and pieces of curriculum or supplemental materials, so it's nice to get a bigger picture of these are all of the supplemental materials and the main curriculum for a given subject or a given grade level.
Yeah, it's a great question because there are multiple supplements at this point,
Yeah.
so, thank you.
Thank you.
Would this have overlap with Newsella, or is that for a higher grade level? It's
Yeah.
hard for me to keep them in my brain.
We do not use Newsella
Oh, okay,
it's
so
for
that
that
was
they-
one that we rolled off. Okay, good. So eventually our asking for review worked. Okay,
you got
great.
it. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any questions from the public or questions in the chat about this contract? No? Everybody good moving this forward? Kim, you good?
Yes.
Okay, fantastic. We'll see this at our business meeting. And then next we have our presentation on summer school. Mr. Weinstein, take it away.
So in mid-June, when students go home for the summer, our summer school programs start up and they're very busy. So I'm going to go through our various programs and why we run them and talk about the participation in each. Again, we brought the curriculum team is here tonight, so they're in all the different subject areas. So if there's more specific questions, I appreciate them being here to answer those. Why of the summer programs? We'd like to start with the why, and we engage, enrich, build strength and foundations for success, and support students that go through our summer programming. The more technical terms for those are we provide academic enrichment, remediation, accelerated learning opportunities, and support for transition between grade levels. Here are the programs that we offer and the number of students in each of the programs. So I'll pause for a second. And the slides after this one, each one of those we will describe a little bit and talk about what they're used for and why we run these programs. The slides are pretty wordy, so I'll tell you in advance for the structure of the way I'll talk about the rest of the program. Some of it I will read, some of them I will highlight. The words are in there primarily so somebody can look at it independently without seeing this presentation and understand that, what these programs are for. So I apologize in advance. One of the things I talk to with our teachers all the time is something called the compete dynamic, which is just an interesting side note. When there are words on the screen and somebody is talking, you can only do one of them. And the slide usually wins. short of me doing cartwheels or anything here, but I'd be out of the camera, so I won't do those, and I can't. But so I will recognize that in advance. It doesn't make for a great presentation with a lot of words and someone talking at the same time, but I want you to understand the reason we do that. I won't read all the slides. Some of them I'll read a little bit more than the others. Here are the numbers of students that have participated over the years. You can see that this year is very similar to last year, right around 2,000 students. There was a bump in 2020. I assume a lot of you can understand why that was. And you can see the growth of these programs.
We also, I just want to make clear for the public that we had a large free program that was available to a large swath of our students, and that was indicative of the large enrollment number that year.
Yep. Thank you. First program is a special education and related services program called Extended School Year that we run every year. The number in this program represents students that actually came into the building. Students participated in in-district programs. It's not reflected of students receiving services outside of the district. So these are for students that qualify for ESY, and students with an IEP have to qualify annually to receive services. And the idea is that to prevent learning loss so students can work on their foundational skills throughout the entire summer. SPIES is a long-standing program. It has existed since 1993. It is a qualification-based program. Students that, let me put my glasses on, which I'm starting to need, that qualify based on experiencing difficulties in reading, writing, or mathematics. You can see in the middle blocks, they also receive support currently. And they usually begin with a morning meeting that models kind of what a traditional school day does. And they go through kind of what a traditional school day goes through. It's from 9 o'clock to 2 o'clock. So they go through a lot of learning throughout the day and try to mix in a whole lot of fun, because students are learning through the summer, and that's not always fun for kids that qualify and want to be there. So they try to provide a great experience. They've been really successful in doing so. Next is our elementary STEM program. These are students that are signing up for STEM. There's 119 of them, and that's really exciting for people that come to be enriched in the STEM program. Something I want to point out, one, we have a partnership with Arcadia University that has been a great one, where teachers are learning in Arcadia and applying what they learn at our school, also led by K.D. Davenport, who's with us tonight. And something that I think is interesting is we have students in our Harriet and Nesby program that go down to the STEM program and work with the younger kids. And that's really magical. When I was an elementary principal at Gladwin in this district, we had high school students. Yanthan Banto, same person who leads this, brought students down to the elementary schools. And it's really special when younger students, 4th, 5th, and 6th graders, see high school students work with them. There's just a magic to that. It was Olympic themed this year, so in an Olympic year, it added a level of excitement to the program. And here are some wordles. So the words that are used most frequently appear the largest. The favorite part of the week seemed to be drones. And when people thought about STEM, they thought of these words on the right. And then next is our ELD Academy for students that qualify based on the WIDA access scores and district assessment scores. And students are able to get services in English language development through the summer, and also being enriched around their peers that have similar cultural and language experiences. So that's been a successful program. We've also managed to engage families as part of the program, as you can see in this image here, as part of the ELD Summer Academy. Math Acceleration, a popular program. As you know, in 4th grade, students go through a variety of assessments to accelerate in math. It's the first time in the district that happens. And because that is a point, and we know that people don't always learn at the same rate or at the same time, we allow different pathways for students to accelerate in math. And the next few slides are going to represent those pathways, and this image kind of shows it in a visual manner. So the first one is a program that's always most popular. It's rising 5th graders to qualify for 6th grade math. And there were 249 students that took part in this program. Most of this was virtual. There were 3 hours each week that was expected of the students as a baseline, and there was 3 hours also for in-person instruction at Ballakimwa Middle School to combine with the virtual instruction that students were getting. I'm going to share this slide and then get a drink of water while you read it. "61 students participated in the Rising 6th grade to Math 7-8, similar model as the model I just shared of Rising 5th graders. And it's a combination of in-person and independent work. So there are face-to-face options on a limited basis, but most of it's virtual. Summer Math 8th to go into Integrated 1. 24 students participated in. It is a virtual program and was open to 7th graders. Also an accelerated learning opportunity. And that's the last of the accelerated learning opportunities to get into our math program. The next program is our middle school math jumpstart program, which is a remediation program for 42 students. And this jumpstart program is for students to get reinforcement in essential math concepts. Also some pre-teaching, and the idea behind that is to build confidence. So sometimes students will be exposed to curriculum before their grade level peers, students that always haven't had the greatest foundation, which sometimes can give really good, strong confidence. So there's pre-teaching done in this program as well. And here's some of the things that students liked. I'll pause and let you read that. And that's our middle school math jumpstart program. Next is our Yes Academy, designed to enhance awareness, knowledge, and appreciation of the curriculum through thematic hands-on experiences, designed to capture interest, foster enjoyment of learning from within, and build self-esteem by helping students develop a strong sense of confidence. This year's theme, and people in the audience, this might be interesting to you or at home listening, crime scene investigation, so an engagement strategy to build an academic program around the theme for further engagement. And students reinforce basic skills in reading, writing, math, STEM, study skills, and learning organizational strategies with their peers. It's also a cooperation with our Lower Merion Police Department, who supported them through that process. And that's the Yes Academy with 45 students at Balakin Wood this summer. Middle school STEM, which is an academic enrichment and accelerated learning in some cases, 90 students, grades 6, 7, and 8. You can see through the bullets, exposed to concepts in engineering. There's a focus on 1080 STEM curriculum, which requires students to demonstrate skills in problem solving, graphical analysis, the design process, which comes up over and over again through STEM programs. Students will learn components of the car and how to drive it, other engagement activities that get students excited about STEM to further their opportunities in there. And STEM for Girls ran for 6th graders for 1 week, and then 7th and 8th graders. 90 students participated in full. The program used coding and programming to tackle and complete different tasks with an automated vehicle. Students had, of all abilities, to express their creativity and express STEM in a fun and applicable way. And you can see a lot of hands-on opportunities, which is always fun. Students enjoyed. Next is our high school math jumpstart, and program that began in 2016 with 4 students and has risen all the way to 16 students this summer. Ran throughout the month of July, the 8th through the 25th. The goal of this program is to increase the number of students taking honors and AP level math courses and science courses. Again, give students the opportunity to enrich their talents and have more confidence in a smaller setting. Secondary summer school, which is popular, as you can see, 581 students participated. This is online only. Most of this, the vast majority of its accelerated learning opportunities, the vast majority of that is in health. The reason people do this is to free their schedule up and allow flexibilities to take courses such as music technology and production 4 and 5. Did you pick that up? All right, thank you. I want to know if my voice is just drowning out or you picked up my dry humor. Also, remediation, students have the opportunity to remediate during that summer period as well. We're getting to the last few programs. Smart Literacy, 12 students participated in 9th grade. Academic enrichment and extra support. Students entering 9th grade develop critical independent thinking skills. One of the things about these types of programs, when you go to the next level, when you come to the high school to take them, it's also really supports the transition of being in high school before their peers get there, having the opportunity to know the lay of the land. So beyond the academic experience, the learning that they're having, they're going to feel more comfortable day one in that really important transition. So I wouldn't undersell the importance of that component of these types of programs, that transition between levels. High School Smart Bridge program. Now the bridge and the literacy worked in conjunction with each other. So you see July 8th through 11th was Smart Literacy, and the Bridge program was on the 11th. So people that were in the Smart Literacy program, this was a more direct attempt at of bridging middle school to high school experience, what I was just talking about, to allow people to be successful, kind of go over what's going to happen in high school, give some learning in that area and develop confidence, and also meet some of the staff over the summer. So our Smart Literacy program, the last day became the Smart Bridge program, and there were 12 students that participated in that. The last program that I'll share with you is called Write-In, and it's a writing workshop program for students that want to develop their writing skills. And you can read a little bit about the program, but a typical day is at the bottom, where it's whole group exercises, teacher-led mini lesson, brainstorming and scaffolding before independent writing time with mini conferences. So students are going to get a lot more individual support on being able to be good writers, a really important area of developing in high school. And that's called Write-In. That happens at Lower Merion High School. And on behalf of these little guys, thank you for allowing us to run summer programs in Lower Merion School District. I don't think there's a question slide at the end, but this is question time.
This is the question time. That was very thorough. Do any of my colleagues have some questions? Mel, Kimberly, Abby? Yeah, we'll go, you go ahead.
Okay.
We tend to let the committee go first, and then the chairs, and then the public.
Thank you for this presentation. I have a couple of questions. One is, why are so many of the enrichment programs at Bella Middle School for middle school? Why are they not at other middle schools? Is it like, just curious why they're all there?
Go ahead. You look like you're about to chime in. Oh,
I was going to wait.
you wanted to.
You wanted to say first,
Okay.
but.
A lot of it is efficiency in bringing equipment to the same place and our staff moving and taking buses to the same place. And so it's just a more efficient process, where the school and the community is not as big of a deal as the 11 individual schools, but the programming is.
Got it.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay. And then can you go over the different costs associated with different programs? Because are there costs associated with different programs?
The cost of the programming?
Are there different costs associated with different programs?
There are definitely different costs to the programs.
Can you go over what those are generally?
Specifically, I would be able to get that information and share that with you.
Okay.
Yeah, and I would just share, generally speaking, for the cost of programs, because we looked at this, and historically in doing this presentation, we haven't necessarily connected it to budget items, although it always is part of our budgeting process. And
I actually meant cost to the parent, to the family.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I
You were
mean,
talking
it's
about
both.
our
All
cost.
those things are- Yeah, no, I didn't mean how much it cost us. I meant how much it costs
There.
us.
Do you know what those are?
I don't have them off the top of my head. I
Okay.
don't know if you can chime in on each of them.
It's Kimberly. So if you want to do an enrichment class, it's about $1,000. I mean, I'm sorry, $500 per class, and you have to pay the district $75 fee. I'm sorry, I was thinking of 2 classes. So it's about close to $600 per class.
For the acceleration classes.
For the acceleration class.
That
yes,
would be for
that's what I
students
meant.
that are
Yes.
taking,
I was
like our
thinking
online
enrichment,
health
yeah,
program, for
acceleration.
example.
Right, but for something like SPIES, if
I
there's,
think that's free.
I thought it was a
There is it is subsidized by the district, but there is a cost to SPIES for families that may be eligible for free and reduced. There's a reduced cost, but we do have a costing structure for some, but not all of these programs, and I'm happy to get that information to you, because it is not all this, it's not.
not all the same.
Correct.
Yeah, right,
Yeah,
that would be helpful.
If we could share that out with the whole board, that would be really good. And just to piggyback on what you were asking, I'm curious, like, how does the district decide how much to charge for each program and which programs to charge for, as opposed to which ones are provided to families free of cost?
Over time, because many of these programs and the costs associated with them have
been in place. I mean, there were not new charges or new thinking of charges this year. So I just want to say, like, there's some historical context to this. And I think in terms of, I'll use a program like SPIES as an example. We know that that's a large program that, we feel is, a value to our students, to the families that are identified as those that would benefit from a program, because you think about the ability to engage with children, so, that they're ready to learn or they're with their peers on day one. So if you think of the variable of like lost learning and the cost of actually subsidizing a program like that, there's real value there. Over time, though, we've tried to manage it in a way, at least in terms of the conversations I've been in, is, that balance of incentivizing families to take part in it, and also the cost of actually running the program, knowing that it's not insignificant to run a large-scale program like that in the summer. So we've always come back to the board to say this year, this is the cost for this program, so it's board approved, and we typically have a conversation around that. But in terms of, is there a specific formula? It's been something that's sort of developed over time and dependent on like what the costs of those particular programs are and what the what we're expecting and what needs we're trying to meet. Those are all some of the factors in that costing. I look at the curriculum team. If anyone wants to add any clarity to any of that, please feel free to do so. There might be a specific example that Dr. Lilly could speak to.
So I'm Dr. Jason Lilly, lead supervisor curriculum instruction, K-12 math. Definitely involved with some of these programs for a long time now. But I believe that we charge $75 a student to participate in programs that are extracurricular, those kinds of things. And we do not charge kids who participate in programs associated with remediation. So if we've invited students to participate for remediation purposes, we don't charge them to attend. We really want them to attend. But programs that extend and enrich, I believe there's $75 cost for those kids to participate. And there is, as was shared, if someone's on a free and reduced lunch, we do accommodate that.
Great, thank you. And you had one more question?
I have another question. And so how do we know the impact of what we value? Because we value that these programs obviously reach a need, and I'm curious how we measure how they do.
It's always a tricky question. I've been hearing that come up a lot, and I understand. I don't know always exactly what this came up in the last policy meeting, like how do you measure? And there's lots of different metrics. Do you mean directly applied to achievement data? Do you mean directly involved, like qualitatively to how a kid feels and their confidence level? So there's lots of different ways. One of the things that we see in some of those slides are that kids really enjoyed and had a really good time and got confidence in learning. So I don't do this, and I hope I'm doing this well, because I don't want to do this in a way that's flippant about a really important question about like when we put money to something. But it's something I've thought about a long time as an educator, that I don't always know that we have the answer to it in the immediacy. If you're talking about achievement data, we'd be able to track students and say how they did in a certain area, and you'd have to apply it to a different metric. But it's a tricky question to answer, so I don't want to do it simply, if that makes sense.
It does. I think maybe to focus in the question a little bit more is, what are the goals? So for example, for confidence, because you can measure someone's, self-reflection, how their confidence improves over time. Are we measuring those kinds of things? Or, how are we determining what we're doing, if we're being successful or not? Because achievement data, of course, is one area that we could look at, but for example, the idea of the bridge program for students that are going from 8th to 9th, that sounds, that's very, very important, but I'm just curious how we capture that, if that makes sense.
And I think I see there's different ways, and with what Scott just said, I think, and the example you gave about the bridge program, there would be data to say the bridge program was designed to provide opportunities to advance to a different level. So there would be data around, this is where the students that started the program, that completed the program with fidelity, and then did that meet the goal? So we can look at that type of data to say that, have that direct output. I think there's other programs that are, have goals like building confidence and, whether there was a survey or whether there's feedback results or things like that of measure. I think that's a question, and we can look and gather that information for you. But I think it's about understanding what it is what we intend to measure at the outset. And so this is a reflection time, but certainly something we can build into thinking about as we budget for next year and plan for next year, what does that offering look like and what outcomes are we looking for?
Yeah, because I don't in any way intend to suggest that we should over assess, but I think it's helpful to have a focus and have, and also as an accountability measure for everyone in the room, for all of us, it's helpful to know, okay, so this, for example, the bridge program might have a different outcome than, SPIES or something. There might be a different goal attached. Obviously, the overarching goal is the best provision of education, but specifying that might be helpful, would be helpful.
Yep, and I understand that. And some of the programs that was kind of embedded in the slide, for example, the ELD Academy, you qualify for the WIDA access score. So in the fall, they're going to reassess, and you hope language develops. In acceleration classes, there's actually going to be students that pass and get credit. A large majority of them do. So that's a metric for that one, is the purpose of it. And some of the ones that are a little bit trickier, and it kind of was in the genre of the answer I was giving earlier, something like some of the enrichment opportunities that kids just want to learn through the summer and learn how to write at a higher level and be with their peers and gain confidence in pre-teaching.
All of those are good goals.
They're probably harder ones that are going to have, that would have to have some kind of beginning and after survey. And if you're in schools, there's no shortage of surveys that they're doing throughout the year. So it's just a matter of which ones do we want to measure. And we can do those things. It's just what makes sense to do and why.
For sure, and I think those are good goals. Socialization is a really good goal, especially over summertime. So, all year round. But I think those are very legitimate reasons to be in a program. I think it's important for us to know why.
Yeah.
So, thank you.
I understand.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
Okay, great. Did you have any questions? Okay, Kim, did you have any questions?
Well, no, I wanted to make a quick clarification that there's a fee of $75 that's paid to the district, but you also have to pay a fee to the Montgomery County intermediate unit if you're taking an enrichment class or acceleration class, and that cost is about $500, just to be clear.
Okay, thanks. Sarah? Or Dr. Lilly, did you want to jump in?
I did. I just wanted to share that Kimberly Garrison is correct. Kimberly, I think, is referring to our summer school program. So if you take courses through the Montgomery virtual program, those are the costs associated with that. The $75 that I was talking about is for students who take things like SPIES, like something like that are just doing a summer program for enrichment. So someone who's doing something like that, there's a $75 flat fee to participate in the summer programs. Summer school, that has the cost associated with that she's talking about. So $75 registration and then $500 to take the course.
Thank you, and we'll get the clarification. We'll make that available for the whole board and for the public of what the individual costing is for that. Sarah, did you want to go?
Sure. I had some questions specifically around the summer math acceleration programs. So like Summer Bridge 5, 6, and 8. I'm just curious to know, because it's a short period of time for students to be in a course to then completely skip that course that's taught for a full year during the school year. So I'm just curious to know what topics are covered in the summer compared to the topics, and this might be like a discussion for another time, or information to come back to. But compared to what topics are covered in those classes when they're full year classes, and just how we are ensuring that there aren't any gaps in math knowledge for those students that are taking the accelerated programs to then move ahead, like going from Math 4 to Math 6 by taking the Summer Bridge 5. What are those students potentially not getting in Summer Bridge 5 that they would get if they were in the full year Math 5 course?
It's a great question. One of the things that I'll point out, it was in the slide, but it's tough with so many of those slides. And as Mr. Weinstein said, there's a lot of words on there. But for that example specifically, there was something on the side, like, I think 239 students qualified for acceleration. However, 124 were required to do the summer bridge program. So part of the criteria we use when we decide who's invited and who qualifies for the acceleration is based on multiple criteria, but then there's an assessment involved. And the assessment includes fifth grade skills. So we're assessing that next grade level to see where our students at ahead of time. The summer bridge, as you said, it's a short period of time, so it's an abridged version of the course, but we've spent a lot of time over the years, and this isn't a new program, we've had it for many, many years. We really do take a hard look at what are the essential skills for someone who's going to move from Math 4 to Math 6 and make sure that they have those key skills to be able to access Math 6. You know, are there maybe some gaps here and there? Sure, because they're doing an accelerated course in a very short period of time. But in the end, the students who have moved through that program successfully have been successful as they move into that Math 6 course that next year.
Okay. And then
Can I piggyback while we have
Yeah, go
this topic? Okay.
I have two more on this topic.
Because I have sat through every single one of your Math Bridge presentations, and I sort of love it a little bit, that crazy graphic that we've never
flow
found
chart.
something better to use because it's the only thing that works. Now that we've been doing it, we started it summer of 2020, right? In the midst of all the Cucamonga world going crazy. If we have any data of what we've seen in terms of enrollment data that would be maybe at a higher level than we would have normally predicted, like, is it working like we hoped?
Yeah, we can certainly try and pull something like that for you to take a look at how it's impacted enrollment over the years. One of the things that again, I think, as Mr. Weinstein shared earlier, it's tough to kind of pull that by itself because we've also had district enrollment growth over the last 5 years.
That's true.
So we'll have more students there, so you'll probably see more students enrolled in the acceleration, but is that percentage-wise, is there a percentage-wise growth in the number of students participating, or is there just larger numbers of students participating? So it's a little tricky to parse it out. It'll take a little bit of figuring it out.
Well, and I know one of our stated goals at the beginning of it was also seeing higher percentages of enrollment of girls and non-white folk in our higher, more advanced levels of math classes. And I think that would also be an interesting way to view that lens, because I know that was one of our goals, in that historically as a country, girls and not white people have been not advanced through science and math through conscious or unconscious bias, and that was, having this pathway was explicitly also working towards that. So I think that'd be really great. And I will hand it back over to you.
Thanks. Two more questions on the same math summer programs and you had mentioned briefly about students who it's available to versus students who are required to take it to accelerate. Is that requirement strictly based on an assessment? Is there any teacher input that goes into that, or recommendations? What differentiates between a student who it's just available to versus a student who's required to take it for acceleration?
So there's a large rubric that involves multiple criteria. And in the end, the number of points earned through the multiple criteria is what determines if someone is recommended directly into the Math 6, for example, or to participate in the summer bridge. So there's kind of three tiers, someone who just goes right through and doesn't have to take the summer bridge. I will also share, though, that it's offered to them, so anyone who qualifies for acceleration can participate. But then there's the middle tier where you qualify, but you need to take the summer bridge because we're not 100% confident in your Math 5 skills, and we really think you need to participate before moving into that Math 6. And then there's the tier next one down where they don't meet the criteria for acceleration. But then there's that next opportunity the very next year, and the next year, and the next year, which I think is the flow chart that you were talking about.
Slide
So lots of
11 flow chart.
opportunities.
The slide 11 flow chart.
Yes, the slide 11 has been an ongoing joke because it is a complicated picture, but there's not really a better way to show that information.
We have a lot of on and off ramps, yes.
Yes.
And then out of that overall matrix, I'm just curious to know kind of, I guess, not necessarily percentage, but like how much of that matrix is subjective information or just like a teacher's feeling about this child would do well or wouldn't do well versus just hard data?
It's really specific.
Okay.
It's even the teacher input piece isn't just teacher input, this is what I think. There's a whole bunch of questions that teachers look for and answer about what they've observed from that student throughout the year. How students interact with math problems, what happens when they get a difficult problem that they're stuck with, what do they do, how do they interact with those different pieces. So it's very specific. They're geared towards the math practices. So it's not content specific, it's more of what are their skills like? How do they persevere and things like that? So it's really observations throughout the year. It's not just, I think this student will be okay, I think this one's not gonna be okay. There really is a rationale behind it.
There's also an assessment piece, like an
Yeah.
actual test
Yeah.
that the kids do.
For sure.
Last question about math for now. What's the difference between Math 6 for 5th grade and just Math 6?
It's really just what grade they take it in.
Okay, but it's the same.
Right, so
Okay.
a fifth grader is taking Math 6 versus a sixth grader taking Math 6.
Okay,
Yeah.
thanks.
Go ahead, Abby.
I have another question. So during, for example, conferences, right, elementary school conferences, for example, at what point do families get notified about this? Is it the end of the year, or is there indication that this kind of thing might be trending and, that more support might be needed? How does that get communicated?
So we share out the process of how we make those determinations late October, early November. So very soon, families in elementary specifically will be getting a letter that highlights the different criteria. It actually includes the rubric. So all that detail is there and how we make the determination. So there are no surprises at the end of the year. It comes out then. We also resend that as we get closer to the end of the year to remind everyone of the process and the criteria we use and what that rubric looks like. And then eventually there's a notification about, recommendations to the next year.
Okay, I will try to be brief. One is I'm just curious about what the thinking is on some of the programs that have really low enrollment numbers and how we make the determination to keep a program even though it may only serve a very small number of our students, but would still be the outlay of cost of both the facility and the instructor.
I think the district historically has tried very hard to maintain programs for those students that need that opportunity. And in any given time, there are, I think, some examples of where programs didn't run. This year, you saw some numbers that were pretty small. I can't speak for every individual decision, and some of them probably were made by people that aren't here. But I do think, generally speaking, we're a district that has a lot of opportunities. We've tried to maintain opportunities because in one year it may be a low number. The next year you may have a high number of students participating, and just having that consistency of access for students that need those programs is something that's always been kind of an understood goal. But it is certainly something in a moment where we're talking about taking inventory of our work and how we're budgeting and allowing for new opportunities is certainly a question that we, as we move forward, think about a little more carefully, probably. And I don't want to say we weren't careful about it, but, it's another component to, like, if we're bringing on new things or we want to see change, like what.
It's a specific lens you would be looking at the
Correct.
information with, and that totally makes sense. I appreciate that. The other thing I wanted to talk about was health. Does our health course offering include sex education, or is that a separate course that the students take?
No, it's in that course.
Okay.
It's in health education.
And it's a one-semester course or a full-year course?
Full year, 2 out of every 4 school days in the cycle, usually in 10th grade.
Interesting. Okay. And I know that our district has been working for a while on writing our own health class because we spend a lot of money and it is one of our top performing summer school programs. I was just curious as to where we are on that.
We're going to hold a meeting and find out our status, I think, at the end of this month of where we are and looking at the feasibility and the staffing and how it will be done. We would be turning into running an online program, which we haven't done typically since COVID. So trying to build that and see if it's feasible.
Yeah, I mean, I just wanted to reiterate that there is a lot of board support for that, and I would assume community and high school student support that would really love to see that offered by our wonderful district teachers. And I know as we're putting together the budget that I would love to be able to save that money and not spend it on somebody else's pre-written health class. Okay, I think that is all of our questions for this presentation. Do we have, I got you. Do we have anybody in person that wanted to talk about summer school programs? No, we have an online comment.
We have a lot of online comments, okay. I think I'll read through them, and then maybe if there's questions, you can answer them at the end, because there's a bunch. Michelle Vessel of Gladwin wants to know, can anybody take these courses, or do you need to recommend by a teacher? Is there financial aid for the classes? Is there a limit to how many students can enroll for the courses? What is the criteria used to invite a child to the course for extra help? Brooke Reynolds from Bala-Cynwyd shares that SPIES last year, which I had also looked up, was $875 for tuition, $75 for registration. Students who receive free and reduced lunch only pay the $75 for the registration, not the $875 for tuition. Michelle Vessel of Gladwin also asking, and I think you just reviewed this, I know Dr. Yanni was looking into having a different company other than the MCIU to provide the summer health program. Has that been changed, or is it the same health course? So that's it.
Okay, so I think we hit on most of those because I believe those came in throughout the presentation. We were talking about, can anyone take any of those? Some of them are invite, some are based on IEP designation, and some are open to certain grade bands. Enrollment limits on the number of courses you can take, I'm assuming that they mean for acceleration over the summer. I think or the number, I don't know if they mean the number of courses a student can take or the number of students in a particular program. If it's per program, that is dependent on the individual program. And I believe from past slides, there have maybe been like 2 or 3 students a year that go bananas and take 3 courses over the summer. But most of them, my recollection is that most take 1, some take 2, and then some very, very driven students have taken 3 in the past.
She clarified number of students in the program.
Okay, that's variable based on individual programs, and I think if you have specific questions about a specific program that you're interested in, you can feel free to send an email to any of our curriculum team, Mr. Weinstein and Ms. Schaefer, and I believe that hits all of our questions for that. So thank you, everyone, and we can move on to our last presentation, which is a quick hit on the introduction to the comprehensive plan schedule.
Sorry. I don't know why this is telling us all of a sudden. Thank you for that intro, and I think that's probably the right wording. This is a quick hit based on where we are with the comprehensive plan. It's about 4 slides in this presentation. It's made to introduce what the plan is and what the process will be, kind of a backwards map until we're hopefully approving in March. And the comprehensive plan is a state-driven document that all districts need to comply with. As a matter of fact, I think that's the first slide, so we'll go in there. Here's the purpose. The Future Ready Comprehensive Planning Portal was created to provide a consistent planning framework and collection tool for all Pennsylvania local education agencies and schools. This is not our strategic plan, but it's made to reflect the plan. So a lot of this is technical in nature. It's the state's template that we have to fill in. So it's not as exciting as necessarily starting a strategic plan, which we have intact. The process is Work is anchored and aligned in our strategic plan, which we name All Forward. And the process begins with internal work using data and simplified logic models to develop long-term goals and action plans. The iterative process includes input from varied stakeholders as the draft plan is finalized. And there's a process that we consult with the state to involve various stakeholder groups to have input on that before it is presented to the board. Also, the data that's talked about that we'll be utilizing will be featured in November's CCO board meeting, where we'll do a more comprehensive data review of our standardized testing, and we will draw from that, which will inform our comprehensive plan. And finally, the format is a state-created template that includes a combination of auto-populated sections based on guiding questions and answers of other sections populated by team members with required content that reflects and aligns with the strategic plan, our district goals, and state requirements. So we are here in October with the board update. We are getting support with a member of the IU. We will start a more comprehensive writing process and following the state's template in November. We'll have some administrative review cycles. We will have refinements and revisions based on stakeholder input, which is around December. We're going to be finalizing invites for that at the end of this month, beginning of next month, in that time frame to make invites for that review. We'll make final updates to that. We'll present it to the board in January or February, and it needs 30 days for public review. That's a state requirement. And final board approval and submission will be by March 31st. And that's the comprehensive plan model that the state makes all districts go through, including ours, that will reflect our strategic plan, has some local planning involved in that. Any questions on?
You have any questions from the board?
I do. I have one. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Sorry. Just curious, so that everyone's aware, how often do we do the comprehensive plan?
Very good. I think you're setting me up to tell everyone, thank you. The state requires that the overall large comprehensive plan is 3 years. There are several comprehensive planning documents that we're in compliance with. Some of them are every 6 years. This is the broad one that's a 3-year requirement. Thank you for asking that.
Can you give an example of some of the stakeholder groups of who would be included?
Yeah, it's specific and laid out by the state. There'll be student, there will be parent, there'll be community, like local business owner, there will be administration, there will be teachers, like the general community stakeholder groups. I may have missed one, but it's representation from each. Yep.
Kimberly, did you have any questions?
No, but thank you for asking.
Thank you. Do we have any questions from the community in person or on the chat? All right, then I think that is great, and I will say thank you for that.
Thank
And
you.
we will have, that is the end of our agenda, and I will let everyone know that our next meeting of the curriculum committee of the board.
Can we just ask if anybody signed in to speak about anything other curriculum related?
Sure. Do we have anybody else who has signed up to speak on some other topics? Okay, come on up.
Very quick. Talia Nassim from Ardmore, and I just wanted to thank you for getting the Wiseman residency underway. And we're looking forward to the Middle East history and Holocaust education that Dr. Yanni and Alexis McGloin has agreed to previously and found very lacking in our current curriculum. So we're looking forward to see what's ahead for that. And the only other thing that I have been noticing lately is that teachers are supposed to be getting approval for using outside resources in their classrooms. But I've seen things going through without getting that approval from principal and vice principal. So I was just wondering if there was some way to implement a better system for checking and making sure what's going through in the individual classrooms. That's it. Thank you.
Thanks, Talia.
Nissim.
Oh, yeah. And we can for sure follow up on that. All right. And sorry, I just got a little thrown. We don't usually, we didn't always do that before, did we? do a general public comment at the end. It's just different because we have it at night now.
I think because it's at night, but I think we do, like in policy.
I think what it comes down to is that we're working on our procedures in our committee meetings and our scheduling. And so I really appreciate everyone's flexibility and understanding as we go forward on this. Do we have one more comment in the chat, Ms. Buckman?
I believe we do.
Or Ms. LaPera?
I saw it. Did you, is it to me? Maybe it's just to me.
Well, while you're looking at that, I can tell everyone that the next meeting of this committee will be on November 11th
Okay.
at 7 PM in this room, and it will also be live streamed. And now we'll get our last comment.
Yes, Michelle Vessel from Gladwin, can you please let us know when the Sage Wellness contract will be reviewed?
I don't know that there's a date set for that yet.
There hasn't been a date set. It's not anticipated for this month.
What is do you want to share the date of the next equity committee meeting? Do you know it off the top of your head? Denise, do you know it?
I think it's November 13th.
Potentially, it's November 13th. That makes sense.
Calendar. It's on our district calendar.
It's
November 13th.
It's November 13th, Wednesday evening at 7 PM. And so if it is being discussed, it will likely be discussed then. I do not know when it will be put forth for full board approval because that has not been put on any agenda. So thank you for that question. And thank you for everybody's interest and attendance this evening. It was lovely to see your shining faces and hear your wonderful thoughts. Have a fantastic Monday night. This meeting is adjourned.